So, if you were to stand right in the middle of Botswana back in 1960,
Oh, wow. Yeah, setting the scene.
right, picture it, you'd be looking at a nation that had, well, just a handful of paved roads.
Literally just a few dozen kilometers in total.
Exactly. I mean, it was by almost every conceivable metric of that era, one of the absolute poorest,
Most underdeveloped.
yeah, most underdeveloped patches of Earth on the entire planet. I mean, their total gross domestic product was sitting at what, roughly $30 million?
Just around 30 million, yeah.
Right. But then you fast forward to the data we're actually looking at today for this deep dive, specifically those 2021 figures.
The jump is just, it's wild.
It is. That GDP exploded to over $17 billion.
Billion with a B.
Right. But here is the crazy part, the part that defies pretty much every historical precedent we have. To pull off this economic miracle, Botswana's government essentially had to act like, well, like digging up their most valuable asset was actually making them poorer.
It's completely counterintuitive. It's a total inversion of how we typically understand national wealth.
Yeah.
And, that is the central puzzle we're going to decode today. The stack of sources that you, the listener, sent us for this deep dive is just phenomenal.
That's so good.
Yeah, we are looking directly at the comprehensive Botswana National Development Assessment Report.
From 1960 to 2023.
Exactly, 1960 to 2023. And it's accompanied by this massive, just multi-decade data set of macroeconomic indicators.
Mountains of data.
Oh, for sure. We're talking about over 60 years of vital statistics on a nation that, well, as of 2021, has roughly 2.59 million people.
Spread out over a pretty huge area, too.
Yeah, across 566,000 square kilometers.
Right.
So the real mission for this deep dive is to understand the actual mechanics of this quote-unquote Botswana miracle.
Because it's a huge shift.
It's unprecedented. How does a country transition from a highly impoverished, resource-dependent state at independence all the way to an upper-middle-income African exemplar of, institutional resilience?
Okay, but, I need to challenge this miracle narrative right out of the gate.
Oh, here we go.
Well, no, seriously. Because when you look at that raw economic
The
trajectory,
jump from 30 million to 17 billion.
right, it is so easy to just attribute it to pure luck. I mean, they found diamonds shortly after independence.
He did, yeah.
And a lot of countries find valuable resources in the ground. They hit oil or they find copper, they dig up gold.
And you invariably see a quick GDP spike.
Exactly. It's like finding a winning lottery ticket. The national wealth goes up, suddenly the luxury cars appear in the capital.
Right, the visible wealth.
Yeah. But usually, almost always, within a decade or two, the commodity price drops. Or
Or a corrupt elite siphons the money into offshore accounts.
boom, the graph crashes right back down. So why should we look at Botswana's massive spike in wealth as a structural marvel rather than just an extended lucky streak?
Well, because the data shows a trajectory of compounding, multi-generational wealth creation, not just a one-off price spike.
Okay, how so?
If you look at the gross national income, the GNI per capita, it doesn't just awkwardly fluctuate with the global price of rough diamonds.
Like you'd see in a purely luck-based economy.
Exactly. It enters this rapid, really aggressive growth track right around the early 2000s.
Oh, I see that.
And by 2021, it hits approximately $7,244.
Wow.
Yeah. Moving a population from extreme poverty, where, basic caloric intake and subsistence agriculture are literally the daily economic drivers.
Right, survival mode.
Right. Moving them from that to an upper middle income bracket. That fundamentally changes the actual capability of a nation.
So they didn't just blow the lottery winnings.
No, they didn't. They built an entire financial and social architecture to capture and protect and actively reinvest those winnings.
Okay, so the question isn't how they got rich.
The diamonds answer that.
Right, the diamonds answer that. The real question is how they protected that wealth from the inevitable forces that usually tear resource-rich nations apart. Which, I guess, brings us to the mechanics of the resource curse. We hear that term thrown around a lot.
The paradox of plenty, yeah.
Yeah. How does that curse actually function on a granular level? And, how does Botswana's data show they somehow avoided it?
Well, the resource curse usually operates through a couple of interconnected mechanisms. Economically, there is the Dutch disease.
Right, where the currency gets messed up.
Exactly. A massive influx of foreign currency from your resource exports drives up the value of your national currency.
Making everything else you try to sell way too expensive.
Right. It makes all other domestic industries like agriculture or manufacturing completely globally uncompetitive.
Interesting.
But the more insidious mechanism is political.
How so?
Well, when a government suddenly discovers massive natural wealth, it has a way to fund itself without needing to tax its citizens.
Oh, wow. And if you don't need to tax your citizens,
You really don't need to listen to them.
that's dark.
It is. You don't need a productive, educated middle class to generate income tax. You basically just need a security apparatus strong enough to hold the perimeter of the diamond mine.
Just guard the hole in the ground.
Literally. And that is the absolute core of elite capture. The state just becomes a prize to be fought over.
Which leads to weak institutions.
Rampant corruption, and very often civil strife. But Botswana somehow engineered a systemic firewall against this.
And the report actually maps this out, right?
It does. It utilizes a really fascinating set of metrics to illustrate this. Specifically, looking at global percentiles for control of corruption.
Right, I'm looking at those charts now.
Notice where Botswana sits.
It's consistently in the high 70s to 80s percentile globally.
Yeah. And their estimated value on this index usually hovers in a highly positive range, like 0.6 to 1.2.
Which indicates what exactly?
It indicates a deeply entrenched culture and an actual system of anti-corruption.
I really want to look at the radar charts mapping their institutional environment in the report because they're fascinating.
They're great visuals.
Yeah, you have these different axes, right? Voice and accountability, political stability, government effectiveness.
Right.
But the two that really stand out as the actual bedrock here are regulatory quality, which sits right around the 70th percentile,
Super high.
and rule of law, which is consistently above the 60th percentile. I mean, the visual contrast in the report between Botswana and the regional averages across sub-Saharan Africa is just stark.
They literally call it an island of integrity.
An island of integrity. I love that phrasing.
Yeah.
But, and again, pushing back here, how does rule of law translate into actual measurable economic growth?
That's a fair question.
Like, it sounds like a really nice democratic ideal, but we are talking about hard dollars in a GDP chart here.
Okay, well, rule of law and regulatory quality are basically the ultimate psychological anchors for capital.
Explain that.
Just imagine you were a foreign investor, or even just a local entrepreneur deciding whether to build a manufacturing plant or start a tech firm.
Okay, I'm an investor.
If you operate in a jurisdiction with a volatile rule of law, you have to price in massive risk.
Like someone stealing my business.
Exactly. You have to worry that a corrupt minister might arbitrarily seize your property, or that a dispute over a contract won't be handled fairly in court, but will just go to whoever pays the largest bribe.
Right, and that much risk means I'm just going to take my money elsewhere.
Capital flight. The money leaves the country, or it just never enters in the first place.
Or I guess if they do invest, they demand an absurdly high immediate return just to justify the risk.
Right. Which effectively strip mines the local economy without building any actual long-term infrastructure.
Okay, that makes total sense.
So by maintaining high regulatory quality, Botswana basically guaranteed to investors that contracts would be honored. The rules of the game wouldn't just change overnight based on political whims.
It created a safe zone.
A safe zone that allowed a private sector to actually begin taking root alongside the state-run resource sector.
So fighting corruption wasn't just like a moral victory for them.
Not at all. It was a measurable economic asset. The data directly correlates it to their high GNI.
Okay, I can see how building a clean, predictable legal environment creates a vault, basically, to protect the diamond money.
I like that analogy. A vault.
Thanks, but I still have to play devil's advocate here.
Always.
Isn't it substantially easier to maintain an island of integrity when your population is tiny? I mean, we are talking about 2.5 million people in an area the size of France.
Spread very thin.
Right. So is it possible that their good governance didn't actually cause the wealth, but rather the massive wealth simply made it really easy to provide enough public goods to keep a small population satisfied?
Basically buying them off to prevent unrest.
Exactly.
It is a super common critique. But honestly, the comparative data globally kind of refutes it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There are numerous examples of resource-rich nations with tiny populations that have collapsed into extreme kleptocracies or outright civil war.
Any specific examples?
Well, Equatorial Guinea, for instance. It has a fraction of Botswana's population and immense oil wealth.
Yeah.
Yet it struggles with severe institutional dysfunction and extreme poverty.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Wealth, even when you distribute it among a small population, it just does not automatically generate high regulatory quality or independent courts.
Those things don't just spring up out of the ground.
They require deliberate, sustained political choices.
Yeah.
Botswana's early leadership actively chose to integrate traditional governance structures with modern democratic institutions.
Creating those checks and balances.
Checks and balances that actually predated the major diamond revenues.
Okay, so they built the vault.
They built the vault.
And here's the catch. Building a vault only solves the problem of thieves.
Right.
It doesn't solve the much harder mathematical problem of a depleting asset.
Ah, right.
I mean, diamonds are finite. Every single time you pull a stone out of the ground, your country essentially has one less asset to its name.
The countdown.
Exactly. So how do you build a multi-generational economy on something that is mathematically guaranteed to run out?
This is where we encounter what is probably the most brilliant economic framework in the entire assessment report.
Got it ready.
It's the concept of adjusted net savings, or ANS.
Adjusted net savings.
Right. It completely reframes how macroeconomic success is actually measured. Because, honestly, traditional gross domestic product is a deeply flawed metric for resource-dependent nations.
Why is that?
Well, think about it. If you dig up $1 million worth of diamonds and sell them, traditional GDP records that as $1 million of pure income.
It looks like a boom.
It looks like the economy is booming.
Even though you haven't actually created any new value.
Exactly.
You just moved an asset from column A, which is the ground, to column B, which is a bank account.
That's all you did.
It's like looking at a family's finances and saying, wow, they had an incredible year of earning, when in reality, they just sold off the deed to their house.
That is a perfect analogy, and that is the exact flaw that ANS corrects.
So how does the formula actually work?
Adjusted net savings recognizes that a nation's natural resources are basically an inherited, finite savings account.
Okay.
So to calculate ANS, you take a country's gross national savings, you add investments in human capital.
Which the data measures how?
Primarily through education expenditure, so you add that. And then you subtract the depreciation of your physical infrastructure.
Right, roads crumbling, things like that.
Exactly. But crucially, you also subtract the depletion of natural resources.
Oh, wow. So under this formula, digging up that diamond and selling it actually shows up as a negative on the ledger.
It deducts from your total savings.
That is wild.
Isn't it? The only way to turn that transaction into a positive, to actually generate true national wealth, is if the revenue from that diamond is immediately converted into a permanent, non-depleting asset.
Like education.
Exactly. In this model, human capital is the ultimate permanent asset. When the data shows Botswana pouring their diamond revenues into education expenditure.
The ANS formula treats that as a massive positive addition.
Yes. They are essentially executing a massive, multi-decade arbitrage strategy.
Arbitrage.
Yeah, they are liquidating a volatile, finite physical asset below the ground, and they're using the capital to purchase a highly appreciating, infinitely renewable asset above the ground.
The cognitive capabilities of their population.
You got it.
See, that completely redefines the term miracle for me. It's not a miracle at all. It's just incredibly disciplined, long-term accounting.
Cola.
They are essentially selling off the family silver, but instead of using the cash to throw lavish parties, they are using it to put every single child through medical school and engineering programs and advanced technical training.
The physical silver is gone, but the earning potential of the family just went exponential.
It is literal alchemy, turning rocks into brains.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But, and we have to look at this, the data from 2021 also flashes a pretty severe warning sign regarding the strategy.
Uh-oh, what is it?
Well, if we look at the stacked area charts for adjusted net savings in the report.
Okay, I'm pulling those up.
The extraction of minerals in recent years is heavily deducting from their total adjusted savings.
Wait, heavily?
Yeah. The sheer volume of mineral depletion is actually threatening to outpace the additions from education and national savings.
Oh, wow. So the shadow over the economic miracle is lengthening.
The mines will eventually dry up. It's inevitable.
Which means the clock is actively ticking.
Very loudly.
They bought the education, sure. But now we have to look at who exactly they educated and whether that human capital is robust enough to carry the economy when the diamond revenue actually zeroes out.
Right. And the demographic data here is absolutely wild.
Oh, the pyramid charts.
Yes. If you map out their population structure over the decades, you see a really profound transformation.
Let's break that down for the listener.
Sure. We were looking at the evolution of their population pyramid. In the early decades after independence, The data shows a classic wide-based triangle.
Meaning lots of kids.
A massive percentage of the population consisted of children under the age of 14.
And from a purely macroeconomic standpoint, a wide-based pyramid is just a brutal strain on a developing state.
Oh, absolutely. You have a very small percentage of working-age adults trying to generate enough wealth to feed, house, and educate a massive population of dependents.
Dependents who aren't yet producing any economic value.
Right. It is a very high dependency ratio.
But then, as the state deployed that adjusted net savings strategy, pouring the resource wealth into universal basic education and public health,
The pyramid fundamentally changed shape.
because birth rates started dropping.
Exactly. As child mortality dropped and female education rose, birth rates naturally began to decline.
Okay.
So over the decades, that wide base narrowed, and the 15 to 64 working age demographic began to seriously swell.
Wait, I see the stat here. The data shows this group growing from roughly 50% of the population to nearly 64%.
That 64% represents the demographic dividend.
A demographic dividend. It's like this golden temporary window in a nation's life cycle, isn't it?
It's the absolute sweet spot.
Yeah.
Because the child dependency ratio drops, families and the government suddenly aren't stretching their budgets across 7 or 8 children.
They can actually concentrate their resources.
Yes, you shift from just trying to build enough basic concrete classrooms to hold everyone to actually investing heavily in high-quality secondary and tertiary education.
For a much smaller, much more focused cohort of youth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the educational outcomes documented in the report are a direct result of this focused investment.
Like what are the specific stats?
Well, primary education completion rates have held steadily above 95%.
Which is a huge foundational victory.
It is. But the most transformative metric, the one that really signals a deep structural shift to the economy, is the Gender Parity Index, or GPI.
In secondary education, right?
Right. The data shows the GPI exceeding 1.1.
Wait. Exceeding 1.1. So meaning that not only have girls caught up to boys in secondary school enrollment and completion.
And they are actively surpassing them.
Wow. Female educational dominance at the secondary level. How does that specific data point like girls staying in school longer and performing better reverberate through the larger macroeconomic framework?
It is arguably the most powerful economic lever a developing nation can pull.
Really? The most powerful.
Hands down. When you achieve female educational dominance, you alter the entire trajectory of the labor force. Highly educated women delay marriage and childbearing.
Which further accelerates that decline in the dependency ratio we talked about.
Exactly. They enter the formal workforce, dramatically increasing the total productive capacity of the nation.
And they spend their money differently, don't they?
They do. The data universally shows that educated women reinvest a significantly higher percentage of their income back into the health and nutrition of their households compared to men.
Which compounds the quality of the next generation's human capital. It's a massive cycle.
It's a virtuous cycle.
Yeah.
And we see that compounding effect in the higher education metrics too.
Right. The report notes a growth in doctoral degrees.
Rising from 0.26% of the population over 25 to 0.39%.
So you end up with this swelling, highly educated, female-leaning workforce. I mean, this is the exact fuel you need to transition away from a brute force extraction economy towards, high-value ad sectors.
Like digital services, specialized finance, advanced agriculture.
Yeah. But, okay, wait. I have to stop and ask the uncomfortable question here.
I knew there was a but coming.
There's always a but. The data proves they successfully converted diamonds into PhDs.
Yes.
But did they actually build an economy that needs those PhDs?
Oof. Yeah.
Because it is one thing to have a highly educated youth cohort. It is an entirely different thing to have a diversified private sector capable of actually absorbing them.
Right.
If the dominant export is still raw minerals, aren't they just creating a generation of highly qualified people who are going to end up either unemployed or, working in government bureaucracy because there is no thriving tech or services sector to hire them?
You have zeroed in on the exact friction point of modern Botswana. It is the central anxiety of their current development phase.
Yeah.
The mismatch between the high quality of their human capital and the lack of diversification in their labor market is a massive structural vulnerability.
A huge bottleneck.
Huge. But before a society can fully transition to a diversified, knowledge-based economy, it has to secure the physical longevity of its workforce.
Health.
Health. You cannot build a vibrant commercial services sector if a massive percentage of your prime working-age population is dying.
Right.
We have to look at the public health data. because it's a roller coaster of really profound, hard-won triumphs and terrifying new systemic burdens.
Yeah, the health data is where the human element of this quote-unquote miracle really hits home for me.
It's intense.
It is. If we look at the baseline metrics, the early victories are just staggering. The under 5 mortality rate plunged from over 100 deaths per thousand live births in the early decades all the way down to stable, low modern levels.
Incredible progress.
And to achieve that, the state consistently dedicated around 30% of its total government expenditure to health over long stretches.
30%. That is a massive commitment.
Right. And we see a steadily rising ratio of doctors and nurses per 1,000 people. They didn't just build clinics, they built a comprehensive infrastructure basically designed to keep their citizens alive.
But but that infrastructure was almost immediately stress tested by one of the most devastating public health crises in modern history.
The HIV/AIDS epidemic?
Yes. If you look at the supplementary data covering the late 1990s and early 2000s, you see a catastrophic dip in life expectancy across the entire southern African region.
It was devastating.
And Botswana was at the absolute epicenter of this.
This is where that island of integrity governance model faced its ultimate trial, isn't it?
It really was.
Because a lot of neighboring countries struggled with denialism or corruption in drug procurement or, honestly, simply a lack of state capacity to distribute medication.
Right. But Botswana leveraged that massive 30% health budget and their high regulatory quality to execute a phenomenal response.
Yeah, how exactly did they do it?
They rolled out massive state-sponsored antiretroviral therapy, or RT, coverage.
Wow.
It was an unprecedented mobilization of state resources.
Yeah.
And because they had a predictable rule of law and low corruption, international health organizations and pharmaceutical companies could actually partner with them effectively.
They could trust the system.
Exactly. And they stabilized their population. They essentially rescued their demographic dividend from being entirely wiped out by the virus.
That's incredible. But, you know, the reward for solving early mortality and surviving a viral epidemic is that your population lives long enough to face an entirely new, incredibly expensive set of problems.
So true.
The pie charts in the report detailing primary causes of death over time, they show a massive structural shift.
The disease burden is moving, yeah.
It's moving rapidly away from infectious, communicable diseases towards non-communicable chronic conditions.
For heart disease, diabetes.
Cancer.
Epidemiologists refer to this as the epidemiological transition.
Epidemiological transition. Okay.
Because the nation becomes wealthier, implements clean water, improves childhood nutrition, and provides advanced medical care, the population naturally ages.
Right.
And an aging, wealthier population simply trades the risk of early, acute death for the reality of long-term chronic illness.
And the mathematical difference in treating those two categories is just vast.
It's night and day.
Right. If you are a state trying to manage a budget, treating an infectious disease is often a discrete one-off intervention.
You buy a vaccine?
You buy a vaccine, you administer a course of antibiotics, or maybe you run a targeted public health campaign about sanitation.
It is relatively inexpensive on a per-life saved basis.
Exactly. But treating non-communicable diseases, that is a permanent drain on resources.
Permanent. Chronic disease management requires immense permanent infrastructure.
Like what?
Well, it means years of continuous prescription medications,
Well,
specialized surgical interventions, oncology wards, dialysis machines, and long-term outpatient care facilities.
which threatens to entirely consume that 30% health budget.
Exactly. It threatens the entire system.
It is the ultimate paradox of development, really. They are basically victims of their own success.
That's a good way to put it.
The transition from basic survival to managing longevity perfectly mirrors their overarching economic crisis.
How so?
They are trying to move from the basic high-yield extraction of resources to the complex, diverse maintenance of a modern economy.
Spot on. And that transition to a modern economy carries a heavy physical toll, which, well, brings us right to the trade and ecological data.
Right. How exactly is Botswana trying to diversify, and what is the actual cost to the natural environment?
Let's look at the trade composition first.
Okay, looking at the stacked bar charts here.
What do you see?
Well, minerals still dominate the export ledger. It is definitely the heavy anchor tying them to the past.
Right.
But there is a vital, growing sliver of diversification here. Commercial services and ICT information and communication technology exports are showing a really steady, undeniable upward trend.
And that rising ICT sector is the proof of concept for the adjusted net saving strategy we talked about.
Ah, because of the human capital?
Exactly. It shows that the highly educated female-leaning workforce is finally beginning to carve out space in the global digital economy.
They are starting to export knowledge rather than just rocks.
Exactly. But then you flip to the environmental dashboard,
Oh, boy.
and the data is just flashing red warning signs.
Yeah, we see the carbon dioxide emissions rising from near zero in the 1970s up to roughly 7 million tons recently.
7 million.
The scatter plots are undeniable. Their GDP growth has been heavily intrinsically tied to an increase in carbon output.
We really have to unpack the painful friction here between economic modernization and ecological sustainability.
It's a huge issue globally.
It is. Building an upper-middle-income country requires a massive physical footprint. You need concrete for those hospitals. You need steel for telecommunications towers.
Electricity to power the servers for that growing ICT sector.
Right. And paved roads to transport a wealthier, more mobile population. Historically and currently, that infrastructure requires immense amounts of energy, which translates directly into carbon emissions.
And the ecological footprint isn't just in the atmosphere either.
No, it's on the ground.
The data on forest cover is deeply concerning. The line graph tracking forested area shows this continuous, sharp, downward trend.
It falls from roughly 137,000 square kilometers in 1990.
Down to under 130,000 square kilometers.
That is a massive loss of natural habitat.
And it's running concurrently with severe strains on their freshwater resources, according to the report.
Right. Because the expansion of commercial agriculture to feed a wealthier population, combined with urbanization and industrialization.
It's creating a massive, localized ecological deficit.
A huge deficit.
It honestly feels like a tragic irony.
How do you mean?
Well, the entire philosophy of their miracle was based on adjusted net savings, right? The idea of responsibly trading a subterranean asset for human capital.
Right.
But the environmental data reveals that in the process of building that human capital, they are rapidly depleting an entirely different, equally vital savings account.
Their biodiversity.
Their biodiversity, their carbon budget, and their freshwater reserves. They built this magnificent modern house filled with highly educated citizens and advanced healthcare, but they are slowly chopping down the load-bearing pillars of their local ecosystem just to keep the lights on.
Which forces us to look at the final overarching assessment of the report.
Right.
How does a nation at this precise crossroads navigate the future? I mean, they are fully aware that the diamonds are finite, the climate is shifting, and their highly educated youth cohort desperately needs integration into a global knowledge economy.
The report actually synthesizes this dilemma perfectly with a core logic diagram on page 15.
Let's break that down.
Okay, on the left side, it maps out the historical drivers of the Botswana miracle. It's a pretty clear formula.
Resource endowment, plus clean governance, plus universal basic education.
Right. That is the engine that drove them from $30 million to $17 billion.
But on the right side of the diagram, it outlines the future challenges. And they are formidable.
Very.
First, resource depletion.
Mm-hmm.
The engine is literally running out of fuel.
Yeah.
Second, the urgent need for a carbon neutrality transition, that to somehow decouple their economic growth from ecological destruction.
And third,
A high-end talent gap.
now that last point is crucial. A high-end talent gap. We just spent, 20 minutes praising their primary completion rates and the growth in basic degrees?
We did, yeah.
But to truly compete in the global ICT and commercial services sectors, basic degrees just aren't enough anymore.
Not at all. They need highly specialized, globally competitive tech talent.
Advanced engineering capabilities.
Deep research infrastructure.
And the report reaches a pretty stark, highly self-aware conclusion about all this.
It really does. It says the institutional framework that brought Botswana out of extreme poverty is necessary, but it is no longer sufficient to keep them out of poverty in the 21st century.
The strategy has to evolve.
So they outline a three-pronged approach for this next era.
What are the three prongs?
First, they must maintain high adjusted net savings, continuing to aggressively convert whatever resource wealth remains into permanent societal assets.
Okay, so keep doing what works with the remaining diamonds.
Right. Second, they must deepen their educational transformation, pivoting from mere access and basic literacy toward high-quality, specialized technological proficiency.
Closing that talent gap.
Exactly. And third, they must consolidate and protect their governance advantage, ensuring that as the economy becomes more complex, the regulatory quality remains Pristine.
I have to marvel at the clarity of this data.
That's refreshing.
It is rare to read a national macroeconomic assessment that so bluntly acknowledges its own existential threshold.
They are looking at their famous miracle, right at the absolute peak of their wealth.
And stating clearly, the old model is dying. We must build a new, knowledge-driven, institution-driven economy before the resource-dependent foundation completely crumbles.
It requires an immense amount of institutional maturity to recognize that the tools of your past success are basically inadequate for your future survival.
Absolutely. So to bring this massive journey together for you, the listener who sent us down this rabbit hole,
It's been a journey.
it has. We have traced a multi-decade masterclass in statecraft through raw data. We watched a deeply impoverished nation discover a literal lottery ticket of diamonds.
But instead of succumbing to the resource curse,
Instead of letting elite capture tear the country apart,
they engineered an island of integrity. They built a vault of predictable rule of law and regulatory quality.
and within that vault, they utilized the sheer genius of adjusted net savings. They recognized that unmined diamonds were a savings account.
And they systematically traded those finite stones for the infinitely renewable asset of human capital.
Right. They poured wealth into education, achieving female educational dominance, which triggered a powerful demographic dividend,
They fought back against horrific infant mortality.
and stabilized their society against the absolute devastation of HIV/AIDS through a massive state-funded healthcare mobilization.
And now, standing at the summit of upper middle income status, they face the ultimate test.
The complex, modern burdens of chronic disease
The pressing reality of carbon footprints and deforestation.
and the desperate race to transition a highly educated but structurally mismatched workforce into a digital, globalized economy.
The final exam for the Botswana miracle is happening right now.
Which brings me to a final thought. I want to leave you with, something that builds on this incredible stack of sources.
What is it?
Well, throughout this deep dive, we have treated adjusted net savings as the ultimate economic scorecard. This brilliant, rational mechanism of converting natural resources into human intellect and infrastructure. But as we look at the rising carbon data and the shrinking forests, we really have to ask a much harder, perhaps unanswerable question. Is there a physical limit to that economic alchemy?
That's a huge question.
Is there a point where human capital, no matter how many doctoral degrees your citizens hold, or how perfectly uncorrupt your institutions actually are, can no longer substitute for the loss of the natural world?
Wow.
Can a nation truly balance its economic ledger if its ecological ledger goes entirely bankrupt? Think about whether the Botswana model is the ultimate blueprint for how developing nations must navigate the 21st century, or if it is simply the last, greatest success story of an era of extraction that the planet can never allow us to repeat. Keep diving deep.